I felt called by God into ministry, called by him to do something more with my life, to follow him more deeply and to lead others to do the same. And this happened at a very young age. But I grew up in a faith tradition that didn't affirm females in those types of roles. And so my calling was very confusing. I was saved at the age of 6, and I felt called not long after that. And I made a formal decision about being called at the age of 18. And yet, I wasn't sure how I was supposed to carry out that calling. It was many, many years after becoming part of a different faith tradition that did affirm women fulfilling those types of leadership roles among the people of God that I began to understand that perhaps I could begin to carry out that calling of God, and that could happen. And it took about 10 years for my mentor and pastor to convince me of that, and for me to begin to take steps of obedience toward that, because I had faced such opposition. It was very difficult, and it wasn't an easy or a linear road. Even after having those chains released from me, it's been years of going to seminary and taking many, many classes and being prepared and trained before finally this past summer my ordination service happened, and I finally became officially an ordained reverend of the Wesleyan Church. What a beautiful, emotional day that was, because of all the struggle and all the difficulty of what it meant to wait and to continue to persevere, trusting God's plan for my life. And I imagine King David feeling much the same way as I did that day this summer when I was ordained, when he finally became king over all Israel and realized, as 2 Samuel 5:12 tells us, that God had finally established him as king. His story goes like this. All the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and said, "We are your own flesh and blood. In the past, while Saul was king over us, you were the one who led Israel on their military campaigns. And the Lord said to you, you will shepherd my people Israel, and you will become their ruler." When all the rulers and elders of Israel came to David at Hebron, the king made a covenant with them at Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel. David was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned 40 years. In Hebron, he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months. And in Jerusalem, he reigned over all Israel and Judah for 33 years.